Hey guys, so I remember having the original Rebecca movie on VHS when I was a kid. Yes, VHS, if any of you even remember that dinosaur relic anymore. So, Rebecca was based on a novel that got turned into a movie and adapted by Alfred Hitchcock in 1940, and it is a classic movie. It was amazing, as is most things by Alfred Hitchcock. I remember growing up on Hitchcock, I would watch his show every night with my mum, and I just loved him. So when I saw that a remake was happening, I was excited because I was excited, but I was also extremely nervous because you're taking Hitchcock and turning it into, well, I guess I would say it's like going from a high end, fancy sort of department store and then going to Walmart. Look, I am not somebody that complains about remakes because I figure at the end of the day, who cares? If you remake something and you don't want to see it, don't watch it. It doesn't affect the original if it gets remade in any way. And I've just seen so many people complaining about it, and it's like, if anything, a bad remake actually makes you appreciate the original so much more because it makes you shine a light on just how good the original was, and that's what this movie does. So obviously this is going to be a spoiler review, so from now on I'm going to talk spoilers. So one thing I will say is I tried not to compare this to the original. I tried to take it for what it was and give it a fair review. But I am only human, and there is one comparison, just one, that I do want to make. So I thought it was really interesting that back when Hitchcock originally made this movie, he wanted the ending to be that Maxime, Mr. De Winter, kills his wife Rebecca, and he couldn't do that because back then they were operating under something known as the Hays Code. So the Hays Code was a guideline of morals enforced in Hollywood. So different things back then, like, they couldn't have like a interracial marriage on screen, which was horrible because obviously back in that time it was a very racist society, but they also couldn't have things like graphic violence and a man murdering his wife unless he got repercussions for it in the end and he went to jail or ended up killed himself to enforce the morals of crime doesn't pay. But Hitchcock didn't want to do that. That wasn't his vision, so he went a different way instead of bending the knee to what they wanted. Go Hitchcock. Anyway, so this new version actually goes against that and goes, I should say, is what Hitchcock originally wanted for his movie. So Maxime, Mr. De Winter, does end up killing Rebecca in this movie. So this is actually more faithful in some ways to what Hitchcock originally wanted. And yeah, that whole Hays Code thing, I think it's so interesting that Hollywood had a set of moral guidelines enforced when you look at Hollywood these days and it's like the epicenter of evil. So it's like, what happened there? But anyway, so Lily Collins, she is cast as the new new Mrs. De Winter. Mrs. De Winter of a second, as they would say in fancy English speak. I don't know, this movie has a lot of classism in it. That is a huge theme in this movie. You see the help doesn't make eye contact with the owners of the house, and I thought that whole Downton Abbey themes of, the masters of the house and then the help being downstairs, it was really interesting, and they could have shined a light on that a bit more and made some sort of commentary on money and class a little bit more. But anyway, I like what they did with this. I thought that Lily was an amazing choice. I've seen her in like Baby Driver, Cinderella, a lot of other amazing movies. I think she's a great actress, and she really is the perfect choice for that modern day Hollywood Hitchcock blonde. Like, she's got those Grace Kelly vibes to her that the Hitchcock blondes always had back then. And Armie Hammer, honestly, I've only really seen him in The Social Network, but I thought he did a good job in that. I thought that was a great movie. So I think they are both amazing actors and actresses. Well, with Armie, I wouldn't say amazing, but with Lily, I would. She really did a good job in this movie, portraying so many different emotions. She had to portray at the beginning of the movie a more innocent vibe. She hadn't really seen a lot of the world yet, and then by the end of the movie she was a much more hardened and cynical person, and I think she really pulled off the different range of emotions well. So one thing I will say I like about this movie is it was visually stunning. So it was shot in Monaco partly, and I love Monaco. I just think that place, it's like a modern day fairy tale. It's so beautiful there. I love the whole vintage aesthetic vibes with the cars and the costumes. So one thing I will say I didn't like about this movie is that it just didn't have any tension in it. I just felt like moments that should have been really on the edge of your seat tense, I was feeling nothing. The score was really underwhelming, and the music, the tone of the score actually didn't really fit with the moments that they were trying to, I don't know, portray. Like, the music just seemed like it should be something out of a completely different movie. So Mrs. Danvers, I would say that she was a really interesting character. I feel like they could have done a lot more with her and utilized her a lot better than they did. I just felt like it didn't really flow, her relationship with Rebecca, the way that they wanted it to. And yes, I know I said I wasn't going to compare, but it wasn't like the original, which was Mrs. Danvers in the original was so much better. So one thing I think that they did do pretty well here was keep the mystery alive until the end. If I hadn't seen the original Rebecca, I probably wouldn't have guessed the ending, so they did a good job with the mystery, but that is one of the only things that they did good in this movie. The rest was a huge dumpster fire of garbage. Maybe that's being a little bit harsh, but it was not a good movie. Firstly, Mrs. Danvers, she was in a lot of ways the heart of this movie. She should have been what really was the glue of this movie, but her character fell a little flat to me. Like, basically Mrs. Danvers, we find out that she was Rebecca's nanny growing up, and she has a weird creepy obsession with her. Like, seriously, she is obsessed. She needs some help. So when the new Mrs. De Winter comes along, she sees her as trying to take Rebecca's place. And she's like, you will never be her, you will never be as good as her, you're not rich, you're the common help peasant type English talk. You know what I'm talking about? Not saying that all English people are like that. I'm just saying that those themes of classism, you commonly see the most in English movies like this. And just, it could have been a really powerful storyline, but it's like, basically Mrs. Danvers is setting her up throughout the movie, and she finds out, and then they have this moment that's meant to be really emotional and brings them together as they start getting along and bonding from that moment onwards, until we find out that Mrs. Danvers is the villain. And obviously you could say that this moment didn't have any emotional intensity because we knew that Mrs. Danvers is the villain, but we didn't know at that point. At that point of time, we were supposed to be sympathetic with her. And the scene just was really cringy and awkward, and it didn't make sense at that moment in time for their characters to act like that at all. Anyway, so after that, later on, Mrs. Danvers reveals herself as the villain and basically tries to get the new Mrs. De Winter, to kill herself by jumping out of a window. And then she doesn't fire her. Instead of saying, get your ass out of my house, she keeps her on as a member of staff. And like, this lady tried to get you to kill yourself and you're keeping her on? Like, seriously. She does obviously get fired later on, but it isn't until later on in the movie that happens. And I just thought that was really weird. And she never really seems to say to her husband, hey, your housekeeper tried to get me to kill myself, and it just felt weird. And Maxim in general, look, I get that he is sympathetic. He is definitely, he's abused. Just because he's a man doesn't mean he can't be the victim of abuse. Rebecca abused him horribly, and you feel bad for the guy, you really do. But at the same time, I just felt like for 90% of the movie, we see him sort of treating the new Mrs. De Winter really badly and looking down his nose at her, sort of. He's very cold and standoffish. He's not warm or nice to her at all. And, this is the whole movie, they're like this. And then at the end of the movie, when we get the big reveal and find out how horrible Rebecca was, automatically we're meant to forgive him for all of the other behaviour and for the fact that he still did kill his wife. And it's like, no, I do not forgive you. And I just felt like him and Lily had no chemistry, and I know that they're both amazing. Well, like I said with Armie, I don't think he's amazing, but I've definitely seen him as a very competent actor, and Lily is a very good actress in this movie. So it's not their acting abilities, but they themselves just had no chemistry. I don't know if that was the script or what got lost in translation there, but watching them together was, you wouldn't think that they were a married couple. So one thing I like is that we never actually do see Rebecca. We never see any flashbacks of her. And I like that way they keep her character as this mysterious thing that we never really visualize in our heads. And I like that we keep the mystery around Rebecca. So I would have liked if they had gone in a supernatural direction with this remake and made Rebecca like an evil spirit who's physically haunting the house and the new Mrs. De Winter. I thought that would have been really interesting to add that gothic horror sort of, to really amp up that gothic horror vibe in the movie and make it like Crimson Peak, or sort of like What Lies Beneath, which wasn't really a gothic horror, but still I felt like I had a bit of those What Lies Beneath vibes in this movie, but both of those movies were way better than this. But anyway, I felt like it could have really benefited and made the movie a whole lot more interesting if they had gone more in that supernatural direction. But anyway, look, this movie, it's not horrible. I think I am definitely bringing a lot of comparison from the original Hitchcock, as much as I'm trying to be fair and not do so. I think at the end of the day, it's a little hard not to. But even as a standalone movie, I would not say it is good. I would give it, honestly, a C-. So I would say, if you have nothing else to watch, give it a watch, but don't go out of your way to see it. So let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do so.